Hello, 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 hello. Joanne Canales. Hi, I'm Joanne Canales, 324 Claremont Avenue, Lake Erie, Florida, 33746. Yes, we do need 24 hours bus and train service, including holidays, weekends, and nighttime every 15 minutes for everybody. Not just some, but everybody, including Seminole County Police. Thank you. Don't let us down this time.
All right, thank you, Ms. Canellis. We appreciate you being here.
And Mass Transit. Yes.
That's true.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yes.
Moving on to our reports, our technical advisory committee report from Ms. Wilder.
Good afternoon, thank you, Madam Chair. So we had a very productive meeting. We met July 9th here at Lynx, and so we received informational updates from Lynx and both and FDOT on ridership numbers, and we learned that we had an increase from the 4th of July service promotion that the City of Orlando did of 3%. Two items of note that were discussed at the meeting were events in nights and weekends and cost sharing opportunities amongst the local funding partners, as well as increased costs for those extended services, and it was due to labor. It was suggested that we look at opportunities for weekends and explore that. Another item that we discussed and that we were presented, and we hope to workshop at the next TAC meeting, is the state of good repair for current train sets. We learned that there might need to be rehabilitation of 3 out of the 10 locomotives. So we wanted to explore that. We want to see where that funding would come from, as well as opportunities of making sure that all of the locomotives are working properly. And then also FDOT briefly shared options of leasing versus new train sets along with that presentation during the rehabilitation of those upgrades. We're looking forward to working together in the next TAC meeting, and thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Wilder? Moving on to our Citizens Advisory Committee update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Citizens Advisory Committee met on July 10th here at the Lynx building. I can say we had the customary presentations, but one thing that we hadn't had in years was like actually full body. So thank you all for the great work you're doing finding replacements. But this is the first time in 2 years that I've been on the board where I actually had like a full quorum and the members were actually very engaged. So it was a lot of very robust discussion. Some things, concerns that we have as passengers. We're kind of a little concerned about the resiliency of some of the infrastructure for the train. Yeah, we have the locomotive, which is definitely an issue, but it's mostly, a lot of the problem is the sensors. And I'm gonna give you an example of that. I get out here at Lynx and I go to Latin Quarter to buy my breakfast every day. It doesn't happen every day, but sometimes there's like a 40-45 second delay between the time where the train leaves and the arm goes up. And this is actually very dangerous, not because I get hungry. It's dangerous because if the vehicles are waiting longer, they're not gonna let me cross as a pedestrian. So it has become a little unsafe. Doesn't happen every day, but it has happened, it happens rather frequently. So I thought I would bring it up. Another discussion we had, really robust discussion. We all know, probably gonna talk about it at some point, some of the car accidents that we had, especially the one in Longwood, which was like really horrible. And my emergency management person actually was about the trains. And she actually, there were some questions about the protocol. So that we're following anytime there's like an incident like this one happening. And one of my board members actually was waiting for the train, and it was really funny because they got a request from Lynx, and she didn't get home until 9 because the person had no idea where the station was located. So little things like that. It's just as we think we're expanding rail because that's what we want. We need to start thinking about that. I gave staff some contact information from some emergency management people, and it's something that we really need to think about because we definitely want to keep the rail is successful. And I think that's the end of my report.
Any questions? I'm assuming that our team has already had an opportunity to review all of those concerns, or you have a plan moving forward to address them?
Yes, Madam Chair, and we'd love to discuss further with Luis about some of these specific concerns, but as in regards to the incidents that we've had since our last meeting, we have had a couple of incidents that we are debriefing on, and we are realizing that there are some lessons learned coming from that, so we will continue to sharpen our pencil and get better. So specifically, we've had some incidences where after the accident, the crash occurred, the conductors and the engineers, were required to be away from the train to assist with law enforcement, and that created an opportunity for the passengers to not be, timely informed as to what's going on. So that's something that we definitely want to address, but we will take all of these points of feedback back to the table to make sure that we're delivering a top-notch system.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Agency update from Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In June, our ridership was up over 16% over 2024. This was our 8th straight month with over 100,000 riders. And we hosted over 40 group rides during that same period, and we continue to see good bicycle ridership as well. On the 4th of July, we ran special service where we had close to 5,000 riders that day. This was the same day that we had the FIFA Club World Cup match, as well at Camping World Stadium, as well as the fireworks at Lake Eola Park. And the service was sponsored by the Orlando Downtown Development Group. As part of our summer business and leisure marketing programs, we're promoting using the new Lynx 311 bus to connect to the airport and out to Universal Universe, as well as to the convention center. And we continue our business outreach programs to expand our commuter ridership and with our employees as well as leisure ridership. We're continuing our SunCard conversion campaign, targeting our non-registered SunCard holders to transfer over to the new system. So we still have unregistered cards out there, the old yellow SunCards that need to be transferred over to the Fallon system. And then our average daily ridership in April through June was at 5,184 riders. That's 13% increase over the same period last year. And then we averaged 28 ADAs and 248 bicycles, again in the period between April and June. And our on-time performance is something that we've been working on to get that on-time performance up. So this month we were up to 90.3 or 13%. And so we continue to look at improving on that on-time performance as well. That concludes my update.
Any questions for Mr. Cook? Regarding connectivity, we have a couple of updates, one from Lynx from Mr. Detweiler, and then Bobby King from Votran.
Good afternoon, I'm Bruce Detweiler, the manager of service planning and Lynx. So for the month of April, we saw a 6% increase, followed in May by a 2% decrease, and in June, a 5% increase. And for the total fiscal year, we are showing a 3% increase. Next slide. For April, we have a 4% combined decrease on fixed routes and a 63% increase on NeighborLink. And the Sand Lake corridor from Sand Lake Station to the airport, the service there, we're seeing a 31% increase in ridership. Next slide. In May, we are seeing a 4% decrease in fixed route, 63% increase on NeighborLink, and the Sand Lake corridor saw a 34% increase in ridership. Next slide. And for June, we saw a 7% decrease in fixed route and an 88% increase in NeighborLink. The Sand Lake corridor had a 20% increase in ridership. And one thing I do want to point out with these ridership decreases and increases, we're attributing the decrease in fixed routes to the discontinuance of Link 155 back in December. And the increase in NeighborLink is attributed to those passengers from 155 probably going over to the 831 as well. Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. If there are questions for Mr. Detweiler, I was assuming you would just jump out. Jump in. Ms. King, welcome.
Thank you. Bobby King, I'm Transit Services Division Director for Volusia County, presenting the transit activity report. The first slide you're seeing is our DeBerry feeder bus route. And we are seeing some lower numbers here in the summer, but I think when you see some of the other slides, you'll see that it's possibly that they're moving to some other options that we have available. Next slide, please. So this is our boat ride service, our microtransit service. It covers both DeBerry and DeLand station, and we are seeing some increases there. Actually, a nice increase in June, covering DeBerry and DeLand. Next slide, please. And the last slide we're showing is our DeLand bus service there. That's an all-day service, and we are seeing some increases in our average daily ridership there as well. Any questions?
Thank you. Moving on to informational items, we've got Secretary Tyler and Ms. Teo who are going to talk about updates regarding FTA.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. So since our last meeting, we have gone up to Atlanta to meet with the FTA to talk about the transition of Sunrail, where we are and where we're going. So myself, Mr. Cook, and we also took a representative from your attorney, Kaplan Kirsch. It was not Ms. Mateo Griffin, but it was Allison Fultz. But Allison and Stephanie have been collaborating to be able to give you a briefing today on the key takeaways of that conversation that we had with FTA. Stephanie?
Sure, thank you, Secretary Tyler, and good afternoon to the Commission. My colleague, Allison Shihara Fultz, who you may remember from our last meeting, she was former Chief Counsel at the Federal Railroad Administration, attended the FTA meeting with FDOT on May 15th, 2025 in Atlanta. And subsequent to that meeting, we collaborated with our colleagues at FDOT to create a unified set of meeting minutes that were distributed to each of the local constituent jurisdictions of the CFCRC. So hopefully you all have the benefit of having received those meeting minutes that provided a fairly detailed, roughly 5-page overview of the information presented to the FTA. And if you have any questions about the information in those meeting minutes, I am certainly available to answer them now. And while I don't want to read you the minutes, I did want to present a high-level overview of the general tenor of the meeting for the Commission. So the Sunrail transition update was discussed. Initially, the operations phasing agreement was presented to the FTA between CFCRC and FDOT, which provides for an assignment of operations from FDOT to the CFCRC over a 3-year term. And that really provided the framework to the folks at FTA for the transition process. Subsequent to that, the WSP transition report was referenced as a baseline for affecting some of those transition obligations in the operations phasing agreement. The FTA asked some fairly detailed questions, specifically focused on documentation and organizational requirements in order to establish CFCRC and that framework that is provided under the operations phasing agreement in the WSP report as a direct recipient of funding from the FTA. And those questions focused on FTA's expectation that that existing framework would require the CFCRC to serve as the responsible oversight entity for the system and as a result become a direct recipient to the FTA. The FTA further set forth their expectation that staff with relevant capacity, technical capacity, administrative capacity, and financial capacity would be in place at the CFCRC, sufficient to satisfy certain requirements of the FTA agreements that will need to be executed in order to achieve that funding status. So overall, we felt it was a very good meeting, and the staff present from the FTA, they had a very robust presence at the meeting, and the staff that was there included folks that serve in an administrative capacity, oversight capacity, as well as attorneys for the FTA. assessing the structure and sort of trying to understand what our purpose was going forward in that framework. Any questions from Susan?
Under your, the second page of the summary, the minutes, there were recommended next steps. Can you share with us what you think our next steps should be as a board to help round out those questions?
Certainly. We had proposed a work session with the board to further discuss how to align the WSP report with some of the feedback and questions we received from the FTA, understanding that that report was obviously prepared a little while ago and didn't have benefit from those comments from the FTA, and now we need to sort of map their expectations onto the framework that we need to build out in order to move forward through operations phasing. So our recommendation was for the CFC to consider having a work session where that information and optionality could be presented. Our firm certainly envisions a role for us in presenting that information to the board, but also, involving our colleagues as well. And we could also include some optionality, some exemplar rail systems that, we're not the first rail system to face a transition and to have to stand up a multi-jurisdictional operating entity. Metrolink comes to mind, Gateway program in the Northeast comes to mind as other examples of systems that have navigated this process with the FTA and could provide some contextual support for consideration by the Commission.
Well, unless there's any objections on behalf of any board members, I think moving forward with a work session so that we can flesh all of that out would probably be the best next move, it sounds like, from your perspective. And does DOT concur with that?
Yes, Madam Chair, that does seem to be a very appropriate next step. We've learned a lot, and FTA has learned a lot, from us, and so they are at a better place than they were a year ago when we first approached them about the transition. So we collectively have learned a lot, and it's certainly worth taking some time to kind of reassess what options are available in terms of an organizational structure and what it's going to take to get to that recipient status. And I think having the Commission's legal team lead that effort with the support from the department that's what you hired them for, was to advise you on how to move forward. So I think it's a great idea.
Well, maybe what we'll do is ask your teams to work with our teams to set up what that time might be, how much time you might think would need to be allocated, and when the appropriate timing might be for that work session.
Yes, certainly.
All right, sounds like that. Without any objections, that'll be the direction from the board. Great, thank you. And then the big bullet in the middle.
Yes, Madam Chair. So while Mr. Heffinger makes his way to the podium, just want to refresh the board on a previous request from the board earlier this year to bring back to the Commission some thoughts and perspectives on what it's going to take to get to a weekend service.
Thank you, Jesus.
Mike has worked with his operations team to put together some thoughts, and I just want to clarify that this is purely for information. The board did ask for this information to be brought back. No recommendation is being made, no decision is being made. This is simply to help illustrate what it will take
I recommend
to
it.
provide weekend service. So, Mike?
Good afternoon, Mayor Chair and Madam Chair and distinguished members of the board. Next slide, please. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. The Sunrail team has conducted an initial study to evaluate options for adding weekend service to the existing train schedule. These findings are outlined in this presentation. Next slide, please. For your information, this is not the first time weekend service has been considered. Let's go back to 2016. To help establish a baseline, we reviewed data from the Sunrail's 2016 Saturday paid service pilot program to gain insights into potential weekend ridership. At that time, the system included just 12 stations, phase one, and operated a 36 train weekday schedule with average weekday ridership around 3,800. The pilot ran 18 trains, half of a typical weekday schedule, yet the selected Saturday ridership ranged from 45% to as high as 91% of the weekday levels. Please note that riders were required to purchase tickets on these dates. Service was not free. With our current weekday ridership average around 5,200, currently applying the same percentage range observed in 2016 suggests that potential weekend ridership could fall between 4,700 and 9,500 riders a day. Something to really think about. Next slide, please. Now let's talk a little bit about staffing levels and equipment. We currently have the resources necessary to meet our needs to run a 40 train schedule during the 5 weekdays. To run the schedule, we have 168 staff members, 11 locomotives, 13 cab cars used to power the train southbound, and 9 coach cars, which are the cars that are in the middle. Next slide. Now let's talk about scheduled maintenance and repairs. We use the overnight and weekend time frames to perform these repairs, and the Federal Railroad Administration, FRA, required for services and inspections. These inspections and services are mandated by the FRA to be performed at scheduled intervals. The 92-day service, which takes about 4 days to complete. The 184-day service, which takes around 5 days to complete. The 365 or annual service, which takes around 7 days to complete. And finally, a 4-year culinary service, which takes around 2 weeks. These mandatory services are performed to ensure the highest level of safety. There can be no compromises. Our locomotives weigh an astonishing 288,000 pounds, 144 tons. We must ensure that all systems are functional and operating to perfection. These FRA mandated inspections help assure that we do just that, run efficiently and operate safely. Next slide, please. So the big question, what resources will we need to run a 40 train schedule on the weekends? First of all, there would be the need for additional staff, essentially an entire new crew. Why would we need an entire new crew? We have 40-hour employees working 3 shifts around the clock during the week, 24/7, essentially a continuous operation that never stops. We can't work someone 7 days straight, and there are the hours of service requirements mandated by the federal law that govern the number of hours that an employee in a safety-sensitive position can work. It's the same principle that we use for timing out CDL truck drivers and limiting the number of hours that they can operate, ensuring that they operate safely. We do the same with all staff that work with the operation of the train. This is not a choice. This is mandated by federal law, and violations can be as severe as halting all service, all in the name of safety. If an employee works 6 days straight, that employee must remain out of action for a minimum of 48 hours. If an employee works 7 days straight, 72 hours without being back to work. The main reason we cannot run full service on the weekends now. The 48 and 72 hour waits periods would essentially force us to cancel our Monday trains. We would also need extra equipment for this staff, an additional 3 locomotives and 3 cab cars necessary to continue service while maintaining and repairing the fleet and to accommodate mandated FRA service schedules. Next slide, please. Operations and maintenance costs associated with providing weekend service are based on the following initiatives not currently covered in the existing Austin O&M agreement with Sunrail. These resources include the train whistle. Did you hear that?
Thank you,
The
God.
waiting for onboard engineers and conductors, the highly trained dispatch crew members, the additional customer service staffing, and entirely new vehicle maintenance staff, cleaning personnel, and additional oversight and support staff, all necessary to ensure the safe and reliable operation and maintenance required for a weekend service. Next slide, please. So we have the operation and maintenance of the trains. Now let's talk a little bit about the signals and positive train control, PTC, activities for the weekend. Sunrail will need to have sufficient on-call service to mitigate any weekend needs by adding the following required positions for our signal and maintenance. An additional signal maintenance supervisor with increased staffing levels for weekend response. They will also be a need for oversight and support staff to manage the incremental service based on the following required positions: operations, tech support, and safety. Next slide, please. Now that we have an idea of what we will need to operate and maintain, let's discuss the acquisition of necessary equipment needs: locomotives and cab cars. We essentially have three means to make this happen. The first being an option to lease. Locomotives can currently be released for around $750,000 to $1 million. That will come with a one-time setup and installation fee for PTC and other equipment necessary to operate the train safely of about $150,000. The projected lead time for this acquisition is around 12 to 15 months. However, we must remain cognizant of the fact that this is a highly sought-after option, and there is limited market capacity. We must check for availability and realize that leasing this equipment is not a sure thing, and there are risks regarding availability. Other purchase options we can purchase. Locomotives can currently be purchased for around $15 million each, which would include setup costs. The projected lead time for locomotives is around 60 months. Cab cars can be purchased currently for around $5.6 million, including setup costs. The projected lead time for the cab cars is around 48 months. And last but not least, we have the request for proposals, our RFP. This option was used initially to acquire our current fleet. We would essentially advertise for the required equipment and seek proposals from vendors and companies, ultimately seeing what industry and contractors could supply.
Mr. Heffinger, before you move on to the next slide,
Yes.
Commissioner Janer has a
Yeah, I have
question.
a quick question. You put, to lease a locomotive, between $750,000 and $1 million, but what's the time period for that lease? I mean, is that for a month? Is that for a year? Is that, how long is the time period for the lease?
Around here, the projected lead time for the acquisition for leased vehicles,
I understand the lead time, but I'm saying, that $1 million, how long of a term do you lease the locomotive
the
for?
lease, that would be 1 year.
1 year.
A
So $1
yearly
million
lease.
per
Yes.
year.
Between $750,000 and $1 million
Uh-huh.
each year.
Okay, okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, I do have a question or two. What's the life of the locomotive or cab car?
The cab car,
Both, what's the life span of?
A locomotive, maybe 30 years if it's brand new. Cab car,
Would
15
you
years.
mind just coming up to the podium so that anybody who might be listening online can hear you as well?
Madam
Thank you.
Chair. Maybe for a locomotive, brand new locomotive, around 30 years, and it's within new life overhauls and things like that. For a cab car, you're probably looking at 15 years.
And under both scenarios, whether you lease or you own, would the expected maintenance cost on an annual basis to be roughly the same? Or would there be a difference?
With the lease option, the company that does lease them will take over some of the heavy maintenance, and they'll be responsible for that for the term of the lease. Other maintenance would be just fall to our OEM contractor as it does now.
Say that again.
So the people that will be leasing the locomotives, they handle most of the heavy maintenance, the things that they.
They handle the cost of that?
That is correct.
Okay.
And then the rest of the maintenance comes from our OEM.
So if we owned it, then we would cover the cost of whatever that
Yes.
maintenance is.
And for the record, would you just mind stating your name and your position?
Michael Berman, I'm the Director of Operations.
Thank you.
thank you, Mike. Any further questions? All right, I'll continue. I think I ended with request for proposals, and we can see what the industry can supply to that. And that's exactly what we did before to acquire our current fleet. Next slide, please. So now let's talk about some monetary amounts necessary to operate Sunrail on the weekends. We've discussed operations and maintenance, then we'll add marketing and signage, station ambassadors, track and signal report, and the support staff budget, result in a total of around $23 million for Saturday service and $26 million for Saturday and Sunday service. Now let's talk about the cost of acquiring our locomotives and cab cars. The first option would be to purchase 3 locomotives and 3 cab cars. At $15 million and $5.6 million each, the end result will be a one-time purchase of around $62 million. If there was decision made to lease the locomotives and purchase the cab cars, the lease of the locomotive would be the lease price of around $750 to $1 million, depending on the price when we decide to do that, for each locomotive per year, and an initial one-time purchase price of $5.6 million each for the cab cars, resulting in a total price of up to $3 million per year for the locomotives and a one-time cost to purchase the cab cars of $16.8 million.
Sunday.
Now that we have a total to operate and maintain and the total to purchase additional locomotives and cab cars, we can reach out our final numbers to operate Sunrail on the weekends with a 40 train schedule. These costs would be, if we decided to lease locomotives, it would be $26 million a year with a one-time cab car cost of $16.8 million. For Saturday service, if we run Saturday and Sunday, it would be $29 million with a one-time cab car cost of $16.8 million. If the decision is to purchase locomotives and cab cars, for Saturday service, there would be a $23 million a year with a one-time locomotive cab car cost of $61.8 million. If we run it on Saturday and Sunday, the cost would rise to $26 million roughly, with a one-time locomotive cab car cost of $61.8 million. Next slide, please. So what questions do we have?
With the enhanced service, what would the ridership potentially be for the weekends? You said it earlier, but I can't see this little small print.
Well, I don't have the ridership for the weekends now. It's estimated that it will be more, but I do have some ridership for special services that we have. You know, the one we run for the Pro Bowl, we covered about 2,700 passengers. You know, we had the Orlando Christmas drone, the drone show downtown, that's to do 6,300 riders. So it would be between probably 4,000, 6,000 riderships.
Per weekend.
Weekends, as we looked at 2016, we used those same percentages with the trains running the full service. It appears that ours would be between like maybe 4,600 and up to 9,500 for the weekends.
It's probably more dependent on what events are going on.
Yes.
Along the line than our weekday service would be. We expect our weekday service to kind of mirror what it's been with growth along the way, but you're gonna, if you have a Winter Park Art Festival or whatever they do in Sanford or downtown events, it's gonna be different.
Parades, things like that. Very true, very true.
Chairman Brown.
So if I add the numbers up for operations, maintenance, and if we bought the train, we're pushing like $88 million a year extra than what we're paying now. So it's another $17 million per partner.
It would be,
no matter how many people ride it.
yes, sir. It would be a one-time cost of the initial acquisition of your locomotives.
For 60-something months.
Around $62 million. And then if you run Saturdays, it's $23 million. If you run Saturday, Sunday, it's around $26 million per year. But after that, you'd have that initial cost, capital investment, then you would have the annual fee for operation maintenance.
Could I ask a question? Why does, I'm sorry, you finished before you done?
I didn't have another question, but I am wondering if I'm the only one that's concerned with cost per rider, which we don't really know, but it could be thousands, it could be, a couple $100 per rider, and the rider would pay $3?
That would be based on the will of the commission. I mean, the will of the commission could pretty much charge what they would like to charge.
So my question is on the slide where you showed us the estimated operational costs. sorry, this microphone is kind of far away.
I know.
The slide that you showed us, the estimated operational
That's
cost,
better.
lease versus purchase. And I'm wondering why the operational cost would be different from a lease versus a purchase.
Well, I think with the lease, when we're operating, that you're gonna have 3 more locomotives, difference between 23 and 26.
Yes.
So essentially, when we buy those locomotives, we're no longer paying a lease fee. So that would be 23 million. But if we lease these, it would be 1 million per year per vehicle, which would be locomotives.
So you're not
times 3.
counting the lease and the capital cost, you're counting that as an operational cost?
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
And if we were to do this, how would you propose that we pay for it?
Madam Chair?
I'm gonna turn it over to the boss.
Thank you.
That was your cue.
Well, that's a great question, Mayor. Certainly, the operational cost today is being borne by the commission and the local governments that make up Sunrail, and that would be the case moving forward. The capital costs, I mean, there are options for capital costs. In fact, when we look at how Sunrail came into being today, there was federal as well as state, partnership and participation in capital costs. There are programs that are available. You have to apply, they're competitive, nothing is guaranteed, but there are multiple funding options for capital. And the operational cost would largely be borne by the local communities with some additional federal support that goes along with running a federally supported transit agency.
Are those capital options available under a lease agreement?
We would have to look further into that. We haven't delved that deeply into what sort of state or federal support could be, brought forward for a lease option.
Seems less likely because that would be an ongoing every year payment versus a one-time capital expenditure.
We'd have to look into that, Mayor.
But so suffice it to say that the majority of the costs would have to be paid for through these different revenue streams that you discussed, not from the fare box. Because the fare box revenue is relatively low per rider. So we would have to depend on either local partners, as you said, federal grants or assistance or other revenue streams.
Yes, Mayor, that's correct.
A random question, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm gonna ask it anyways. Do the fares cover the cost to collect the fares?
Currently today, I'm gonna defer to Mike on that.
We've actually got a new vendor for our fare collection. And, we essentially went from $275,000 a month to around $50,000 a month. So there may be times when we have exceptional service, like during spring break, during Christmas holidays, that our fare will cover the fare collection expense. There have been times where it didn't.
Well, like the first 10 years, correct?
Watch it.
The new company Louisville, if you think about it, when we had that technology back in 2014, really that technology came from 2010. It's come a long ways from now. So 15 years later, we're getting the latest, greatest updated technology, and it's brought our cost way down. And I can share those with you.
So we're at least breaking even on fare collection?
Sometimes we are. Majority of the times we are.
Annually, are we breaking even? How's that?
I would have to look into that. I want to be guessing.
Madam Chair, for a complete
that.
answer, we'd like to come back with you.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. It's a great question.
Well, let me give you
Yeah,
just a
more.
little bit of history on that. I at one point proposed that if it costs more to collect fares than you got in fares, just make it free. But the response, I guess, or the thought at that point was, if you make it free, you can never charge again. Because going from free to fares at some point would be a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, and that, thank you for asking that. That's a great question. We all know the history. And it makes you want to say, well, why are we charging anything? Because when we talk about he just asked a question, are the fares collecting the process of charging, of handing out tickets? Yeah, maybe, for most of our history, no. So we're not talking about fares covering anything in operations and maintenance. So that begs the question, why do we charge anything? He just answered it, but if we say it's free, then it's free for forever, correct? Is that what you just said, Mr. Mayor?
It would be hard to go from free to collecting, like we were having that issue with Willow in the downtown.
Right. It's always hard to go from free to, now you gotta pay.
Okay. The one advantage to charging for fares is you have some control of who rides your train.
Another issue.
If you've ridden the train a lot, if you've ridden the bus, you've probably had some unpleasant experiences having ridership, having tickets, and having conductors that control that optic. You do control the ridership and, the optic of you riding on trains, whether a pleasurable one or some of the time.
Mayor Jennings, did you have another question?
Yeah. I guess the other question I had was, I guess part of the argument and the analysis that has to be done in order for us to have the willingness to do it is how many cars will we take off the road as a result of doing this?
Madam Chair. Mayor, that's another great question, and we certainly can come back with that information. We haven't studied that at this point. So, whatever additional information or analysis that the commission would like, we certainly would be happy to come back with that.
I think it would be difficult for us not knowing all of those answers, and most of us don't have a dedicated funding source to be able to support this. And so I know from the Orange County perspective, that cost would be significant to enhance the ridership, the investment that we would make in it. Millions of dollars a year increase for us. And so I want to understand the cost benefit relationship. And to me, answering that is intertwined in knowing how many cars we take off the road, how many people are we helping to move throughout the region that perhaps improves traffic congestion and those types of things. Because the local partners there's no scenario where the local partners would not pay a portion of this additional cost. Is that correct?
I think that's a good statement, yes.
So I don't understand that.
I think one of the things that it was really good about bringing this forward today with this information is, regardless of what we could flip a switch and have happen tomorrow, which none of this could, it all has to happen for the Sunshine Corridor to become a reality. In order to run trains to the airport, we have to be running 7 days a week, essentially almost 24 hours a day. So we need to be keeping this very much in the forefront of our minds as we plan as local governments moving forward. Now, granted, the ridership would be exceedingly more with the Sunshine Corridor because you're talking about running trains to the airport. But I think that from Seminole County's perspective and our commitment to continuing to pursue the Sunshine Corridor, we have to have this conversation and be very aware of what our costs may be so that we can plan. And also, I do think there's an opportunity for private sector partners to contribute for weekend service. There is so much discussion and demand when we look at social media comments. Our marketing team, every time they post something that's wonderful about riding Sunrail to encourage ridership, the comment section is flooded with, that'd be great if I could do it on the weekend. Yeah, I would love to go to Sanford if it was on the weekend, but lots of comments about weekend service. So our constituents want it. I understand they may not want to pay for it. But if we are serious about the Sunshine Corridor, we need to be serious about nights and weekends, is my perspective anyway. So if I know there are lots more conversations and questions to be had. This is certainly just a very high level, first glance overview of this. but, certainly, any and all more questions, are welcome, and then we can have deeper dives later.
Just two more comments. I assume from the Customer Advisory Committee, seems like used to be whoever was the chair of that, every meeting would say, we'd like to have Saturday service, so I assume that is still the case.
Yes, the call for the residents is actually, they want to see weekend services, they want to see night services. Every time that I've been able to ride at night, for example, we had the Magic Games, it was extremely convenient for me to get back to Winter Park. So it's definitely a problem. I think that where we having some experience doing this, we're gonna just have to educate residents that if you wanna have nice things, you have to pay for them. And it's a difficult game, but that's the reality. We certainly have to have that conversation. And again, I don't think it would have to come from you specifically, but I know the other groups like Legal Voters wanted this very transportation. Maybe those groups can take the lead in helping with that.
Commissioner Janer and then Chair Brown.
Oh, actually, I didn't have my hands up, but I'll make a comment. I just know from Osceola County's perspective, we're struggling now to cover the increased cost of transportation. And, you know, I am a big advocate of public transit.
Me
but
too.
I don't know, short of a dedicated funding source, how we would even contemplate this. So I would feel irresponsible to say I'm gonna keep looking into it and spending money diving into this when I don't know if we could be able to afford it, even though I want the weekend service, I want all that. So I think it's something that, you know, I would like this information given to me so that we could go ahead and have staff share it with the rest of my board, so they have an awareness and see if they're even looking, interested in
If I may
continuing to
add,
pursue that option.
just because I've done this in the past, and right now, when we were looking at Orange County, the actual median cost for a household for transportation expenses was 25%. If you live in like a central part of the county, people think that the status quo is not costing them money, and it's not gonna keep increasing. Right now, I'm happy because I have my Toyota from 2010 and I don't have a payment. I'm scared of having a car payment that's gonna be $500, really. And we know that cars, so that's where the education process comes in and have the situation that, well, yeah, we can go the way we're going, or we can actually go and explore other options, you know? Is it the difference if I have like a good transportation system, like a train, maybe instead of having to get two cars, maybe you can only get one car? What are your savings?
Chair Brown.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's absolutely true. I hear it all the time from constituents that I want the train to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but they don't look at the cost. And their cost is not gonna go from 25% of their budget to zero if we did this, because there has to be a mechanism to pay for it, and it will show up at some point in their taxes or quality of life or something. I would love it. For me, I've always been a proponent in my own mind of 24/7 service, and then I look at the cost. But I will say, I really appreciate this discussion and the questions. I think everybody's looking at it the same way, that, yeah, it would be great to have, how do we pay for it? And then I just had one question, I don't know who could answer it, about going to the train to the airport. Can we carry the same amount of people from the airport to the 5 locations on Lynx and Votran as we could a train?
Chairman Brown, want to make sure I understand your question. So the capacity that the train can carry to the airport, could that also be accommodated through a bus?
Yes, for billions of dollars to take the train to the airport versus the cost of taking buses to the airport. What's the benefit of numbers of people that we're bringing to the Orange County Convention Center or wherever?
Sure, that is a great question. Unfortunately, we don't have, that sort of answer at our fingertips. The TCAR, the Transit Concept Alternatives Report for the Sunshine Corridor, did attempt to, to look into that. So there is a distinct, benefit, for the train, because it can carry, a large number of people, very, very quickly. And that weighs in heavily, to a transit rider's choice, or really any traveler's choice to use transit, is how quickly, how efficiently, what's going to be my ridership experience. And so, they're not going to be considered equivalent experiences. And so that's going to, just have some bearing on who chooses which route.
True, and it also has a bearing on what it costs 5 partners.
Absolutely.
To do that. Thank you, good, very good discussion.
What are the next steps?
Well, I think this was an informational item. Yeah, I don't know that there is a next step unless the board wants to give direction to take a next step. But we can certainly take advice from DOT and from the attorney on what our next steps might be. I do know with all of the conversation happening around the Sunshine Corridor, that this willingness to at least start to look at nights and weekends is an important piece.
That's what prompted my
Okay.
question.
Then I'll defer the answer, obviously, to Secretary Tyler.
So y'all have had a great discussion. You've asked some very thought-provoking questions. Some of these, I've written down. These are, things that we can look into, relatively quickly without spending, a lot of money to do that. Thank you for that, Commissioner Jenner. So we'll follow back up with the board on some of the questions that you've asked today. But outside of that, we await your direction.
Would it be meaningful that if we're scheduling a work session on the FTA discussion, that we add an additional item to further discussion on nights and weekends? Okay, so that's, anyone opposed to that? I hear one, that's a good idea. Okay, so maybe we'll make it, go ahead.
I just have a couple of other, once you finish that.
Okay, so we'll make it a 2 part work session then, for whatever it is that we get scheduled.
As part of that, Ms. Secretary, I'd like to really keep an eye on these lead times, both for going to the airport and if we're doing Saturday operation, because under either scenario, it looks like, unless we were to do the RFP and somebody pops up and says, oh yeah, I've got 3 locomotives I can give you right now, but otherwise there's 4-year time frame or 2.5, 3-year time frame, so that's going to be the same whether it's this shortened Saturday service or the full-time service to the airport. So we talked about it the other day, but I just like to understand that. I don't want to get to a point where we've done planning and then all of a sudden,
There you are.
Still 4 years so we can get any locomotives. So just keep our eye on the ball on that. And then, I don't need this right now, but I don't completely understand why it's 22 million to go to Saturday service and just another 2 or 3 million to go to Saturday and Sunday service. Both, so maybe you'll just tell us about that when we come back in the next session. And then we could think about the Denver approach, and that was a sale of, I don't know whether it was a half cent or a full cent, but it was 11 counties that all did it. But we obviously have to have legislative authorization, but doing a 4-county sales tax referendum is a possibility if we are authorized to do that. Just throwing that out there.
Commissioner Jager has another question.
Funding is important. So, in terms of the lease off, and by the way, Mayor Dyer, some of the costs are fixed, no matter what, if you do just 1 day or 2 days, from looking at the chart. Leasing. So, there was a comment by Ms. Walker during the TAC committee about possibility of having to lease some locomotives to do some overhauls, which for me is a little bit shocking because I thought we got everything in a state of good repair and we just took over the system. So that's another conversation that I hope that we can have maybe the next meeting. But, since there's limited inventory of locomotives that you can lease, then if we're gonna lease locomotives, let's say potentially because we have to lease them for overhauls, that really wouldn't be a viable option if we wanted to do weekend service because of the limited, is that more or less accurate or no?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So we have discussed the idea with the TAC about potentially leasing one vehicle, one locomotive. So the fleet is in a state of good repair, because we are doing the required maintenances that are required, and going beyond that. However, these vehicles are, 11 years in operation, and they were remanufactured when we acquired them. So they will still need, additional investment to keep them going. And part of our negotiations between FDOT and the local funding partners in the commission included a $10 million fund that FDOT put into an escrow for the express purpose of investing further into the locomotives, into the fleet, to be able to take advantage of it fully, to do some of the much more extensive overhauls, to really extend the life of that fleet. We're going to need to take a vehicle, a locomotive, basically out of the fleet for an extended period of time, potentially up to 6 months. We'll literally take it apart and ship the parts to other vendors around the country for major refurbishment, kind of trying to reset that 30-year clock if we can, and then bring it back together, reassemble it, and put it back into the fleet. We have enough vehicles today to be able to have spares on hand, because we do have locomotives that have broken down. We've had to send out a rescue train. But to be able to take one out of the fleet, for 6 months at a time, we're starting to roll the dice on the availability of the equipment. So we haven't pursued that much more extensive overhaul. To be able to pursue it, we believe that we would need at least one additional locomotive to do that. And that locomotive could be a leased locomotive. And then that would unlock, the commission's ability to take full advantage of that $10 million investment into the vehicle. So the idea would be is you lease a locomotive, then you sequentially take one at a time and do a major overhaul on the existing fleet. So that's the idea that has been, discussions have started on at the time.
So since we're talking about just potentially, I mean, we haven't had this conversation, leasing one, then they would still open up the possibility for leasing for this weekend service, because that would not, obviously they have more than one locomotive that they would be leasing. That's an answer to my question.
Thank you. Any other questions while we have this topic on the floor? We have a lot more robust conversation.
Just one that brings up, we don't have a request for proposal out for this potential train that you're talking about yet, do we?
No, sir. No, sir. We're just starting to talk to the TAC about that idea. That would certainly cost, additional monies if the commission wanted to go in that direction, and that would have to be approved through a budgetary process, which is the next item on our agenda, by the way. But that is not a proposal at this time. We have begun having those conversations with the technical advisory committee to help them understand what we have learned about how we can take full advantage of that $10 million and what it would take to take full advantage of those resources.
Okay, thank you.
Great discussion. Thank you very much. We'll look forward to talking more about it during the work session coming up.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, so our next discussion item, or informational item, is regarding the budget. I'll turn that over to Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you recall, at our meeting in April, you approved the tentative budget. One of the amendments that was proposed by Seminole County was for us to provide a tentative revised budget after the fiscal year was concluded to capture any of the fund's remaining balance. And so that fund balance could be then utilized to reduce the fiscal year 26.
Good.
So we are in the process of doing that, looking through those numbers. We're not ready today. We'd like to bring it back in August if possible.
So the budget will be coming back in August and we'll have that number at that time. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any questions about that?
What happens if you go over budget?
We don't intend to go over budget.
Watch it, yeah.
Oh, gosh. All right, moving on to our action items on today's agenda. We have ratification of the Osceola County CAC numbers. Would you like to make that
Yeah,
motion?
motion to approve.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Would someone be kind enough to make the
Motion to reappoint Seminole County CAC member?
motion and a second? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We do have one more appointment to be made for Seminole County, and we will bring that in the future agenda. The next motion is requesting to approve the list of slated attorneys from Kaplan Kirsch to represent the city of CRC as a part of our legal services contract. Is there a motion? Or does it, Ms. Griffin Mateo, would you like to discuss this and talk about this item before we vote on it?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Puts us in a little bit of an awkward position because we are the counterparty to this contract. And so from an ethical perspective, I can provide some background information to the commission, but not legal advice. The existing agreement prescribes that we identify all attorneys who could possibly ever provide support services to the commission. Certainly, we are sensitive to the cost pressures that are being discussed today, and it's not anticipated that all of the attorneys here would be providing, collaborative services. But to the extent that the individuals identified here have specific expertise that could at some point be useful, we felt now was the time to have them approved to provide services, again, coordinated in advance with Seminole County as our contract manager. But just to have that decision taken so that optionality was on the table.
Move approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Any board member comments? Had some good discussion already today, but I'll start down here with Mayor Demings if you have anything.
Wear your sunscreen.
Yes, it's gonna be a hot one. Commissioner James?
Nothing to add.
Chair Brower?
Yeah, good discussion today.
Anything from DOT or anything from concerns?
No, ma'am.
All right, with that, we'll be adjourned at 2:35.
All right. This concludes the meeting that we were at. Thank you very much for watching this and everything else, and maybe commented and everything else. Thank you very much. Especially when everybody needs 24 hours bus and train service, including holidays, weekends, and nighttime, so that no one would be stranded the way we did this past decade. Thank you for watching. This is Joanne Canellis out. Bye. All right.